an honor for me to be here with you, even though being back in school and seeing all that math on the board did create a little anxiety in me. I don't know if that happened to anybody else, but I think we've got a clicker here. Now, it really is an honor to be here. You know, I've been a big proponent, and I believe I understand the value of education. I know the impact education has had in my life. And you know, we've one of the things that we'll talk about here in a second is our company. One of the things that we really focus hard on is continuous improvement. And we have Craft University through our school that we've had about 30 of our employees that we've supported, encouraged, and helped pay for them to go back and get their MBAs. We've got many others of our nearly 1,400 employees that are going back and working on their education. So it's an honor to be here at Valencia today. As Nicole said, I'm on the board of UCF, so we value our relationship with Valencia and the fact that so many Valencia students come to UCF. So it's good to be here with you today. We're going to go through, we won't watch that again, even though it was good. We'll see, there you go, that's me. Nicole introduced me. So I want to talk a little bit about our company and who we are and just share some insight with you. We've got a really unique history. How many of you have heard of Craft before? Anybody? Most of you have. We've been in the community here for 94 years, founded here in Central Florida, and got a really unique past. And the company has been really one of the pillars of the community. It's way before I was born. And a couple of the unique stories are during World War II, Craft built the boats that helped the Allies cross the Rhine to get into the final invasion of Germany. And is a unique story because, as I'm going to get to in a second, our company's got a strong faith culture. And when we were given the job by the military, the company did not want to work on Sunday. And the military said, no, you have to work on Sunday. There were they needed 1,200 boats to cross the Rhine. There were three organizations that were given the contract. And so basically the company said, well, we're not going to build them. So the military said, okay, we'll honor the fact that you won't work on Sunday. So at the end of we had 30 days to build 400 boats, which is a lot of boats. And at the time, this was during World War II, right? So they literally closed all the streets around our company. They built while we were building the boats, they built a railroad track right to the company so they could load on. This is World War II. It was war times, and everything took precedent. And so I say we, I wasn't born yet, but Craft, I say we, Craft, actually finished the boats about 8 days early, and the other companies couldn't finish their 400, and so we ended up building like an extra 100 and some during those 8 days and got the boats over to the Rhine. I was actually in Germany just a couple of weeks ago, and I thought on one of my trips to Germany, I want to find the spot where those boats went across. I thought it would be unique. In 1960, the company went through bankruptcy, and they had a U.S. government project, and the government inspector wanted a bribe, and the company wouldn't pay a bribe, and so the government inspector failed the boats, put the company into bankruptcy, and the company went through the process. All the debts were discharged, but the interesting thing about that story is the company spent 25 years tracking down vendors, and over the next 25 years, even though all the debts were discharged, spent 25 years going back and finding vendors and paying them off. And it took into about the early 80s in order to get to that process. So this would be like somebody knocking on your door at your house, okay, and saying, hey, I know you don't know me, but 25 years ago, your grandfather had an upholstery shop, and we owed him $8,000 that was discharged in bankruptcy. I know your grandfather's passed away, but here's the $8,000 for your family. And so it's just part of the culture and part of who Craft is and who we continue to try to be today. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But let me just share a little bit about some of our companies and who we are. Probably most of you have heard of Nautique. Nautique is our biggest company. It's about half, maybe a little less than half of Craft in total. We're built here in Orlando, build water ski and wakeboard and wake surf boats. And really premier product here, built here in Orlando, goes all over the world, as we'll talk about in a second. Then we have a couple water parks. We have one here in Orlando Water Sports Complex. If you've driven down 528, it's right near the airport. You've seen it there on the right. If you ever want to go, if you've never been and you ever want to go, take your kids and your grandkids, shoot me an email. Nicole, Jeff have my information. I'll be happy to have you go as my guest. And just let me know.
Let's go right now.
Let's go right now. All right, let's go. Pick up the media. All right. No, it's a lot of fun. We have, basically it's wakeboarding on a cable system that goes around the lake. And then we also have an aqua park. It's closed right now, but it'll be open about the 1st of March. An aqua park is a big inflatable thing that you climb all over and jump off. And it's a lot of fun. I do it, and I love it. I do both of them, actually, and I love it. So if you'd like to go as my guest, get in touch with me, mention this morning, and I'd be happy to comp you and your grandkids or kids to either one to go. So we got one of those in Miami. We're getting ready to open one, Elite Cable Park, between here and Tampa. So we've got 3 of those. In South Carolina, just a little north of Columbia, we have an engine company. We build PCM engines, we build Crusader engines, and we build Levitator engines. Levitator engines go in airboats. Crusader and PCM engines go in recreational boats. But it's interesting. Anybody want to guess who's the biggest purchaser of airboats in the country? Have a guess?
State of Florida, National Parks and Recreation.
Really close. The U.S. government. And the government, and they warehouse them. And what they do is they'll put in cities where there's potentially could be a flood, and they buy them and they warehouse them so that they're prepared if there's a flood, they can get and rescue people and so forth. So we've got that company in northern Arkansas, just a little south of Springfield, Missouri. We have a company called Bass Cat and Yarcraft. We build bass boats there, and we build walleye fishing boats there. In California, a little town called Merced, we have Centurion and Supreme, 2 boat companies out there, both in the water sports industry. In southern Arkansas, we have a company called Sea Arc. Sea Arc builds aluminum fishing boats, and we're actually partnering right now with a project with UCF to do a real high-tech aluminum fishing boat. And then we have just outside Knoxville, Tennessee, a company called Bryant. Bryant builds stern drive, runabout boats. And then also here in Orlando, we have a new entity that we started just a year ago called Watershed Innovation. And it's a really interesting project that we're doing. We're committing millions of dollars to this project. And it's based on the fundamental belief that the world's going to be dramatically different in 10 years. And about a year and a half ago, I spent 6 days out at Silicon Valley at a place called Singularity University. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. If you ever have an opportunity to go there, it's an amazing experience. And this guy, Peter Diamandis, anybody heard of Peter Diamandis? If you haven't read his book, the book Abundance by Peter Diamandis, amazing book. It'll change your thinking about the future. And so he brings in for 6 days out in Silicon Valley the world's top leaders on artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotics, 3D printing, neuroscience, quantum computing, nanotechnology. He's bringing in all these people, and they share with us. There were 96 of us there, 96 primarily CEOs. There were only 18 from the U.S. The other 80 or so were from all around the world. And they shared with us what's happening in all these areas of technology. And at the end of 6 days, I just left a completely different person. I mean, the world is going to be dramatically different in 10 years, the way it is, than what's happening today. And, all kinds of things. And even neuroscience. We saw a video of a guy hooked up with sensors on his head, and he's hooked up, and he's thinking about a sailboat, and they take the sensors, and you can see a sailboat on the computer screen. They can actually take what he's thinking. So we've actually got one. We need a volunteer that'll let us see what you're thinking. So... Actually, we won't do that. But so many different things. I mean, the real game changers, quantum computing, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. These are just real game changers, going to change the world. And I'm really, really nervous about it as it relates to our country because we're behind. The United States, if you go to Europe and you go to Asia, both those continents are ahead of the United States in things that are going to lead the world and drive the world. And they're focused on artificial intelligence and nanotechnology and quantum computing and all these things, and we're trying to save coal, which is the past. And so we need as a country, I think, to look forward. But anyway, so we as a company decided, we're gonna go out of business if we don't understand what changes are taking place. And I think there's a lot of companies. I actually heard a speaker not long ago who said he thought his estimate was 80% of the Fortune 500 would be out of business in 10 years. Wow. And that's because of these changes, and these changes are going to come so fast and they're going to be so dramatic. So we started Watershed Innovation. As I said, we're investing millions of dollars into this in order to look at all these exponential technologies and try to decide how they can impact our company. Because if not, somebody's going to come along we've never even heard of before and just totally change our industry and put us out of business. So I could talk for about 4 hours on that, but I won't. I'll stop there. And then we're in 70 countries around the world. I've been to all of them. We've got distributors in these countries. We focus on, I really believe that the global economy is growing like crazy. And so we're very heavily focused on expanding around the globe. And there's a lot of wealth being created around the world, tremendous amount of wealth being created. So we focus a lot on the global economy. So that's sort of who we are, but this is really sort of who we are, what we aspire to be. This is what we call our culture identity pyramid, and this is, I'm a big believer that culture matters. Culture matters in a really, really big way. And I've thought that for a long time, but what really impacted my thinking on this was a book I read a few years ago. Some of you guys have probably heard of it, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Really, really impactful book. And so we had, this was actually before I read the book, we put this pyramid together. We had all these principles at Correct Craft, all these things that we talked about all the time that were important to us. And one day I realized, it's sort of messy. We don't really have it in a clear format that we can communicate well. So we created this culture pyramid that really captures what's important to us. And I mentioned our company was started in 1925 by W.C. Malone on building boats to the glory of God. That was faith was an important part of his story, and it continues to be over the decades, an important part, of the company and our company's foundation. Out of that flows really what I call our why, which is making life better. And if you can in your business, if you can really catch this why, and you can really permeate it through your business, I cannot overstate the impact it can have on your company. A day does not go by at our company where in a meeting at some point somebody doesn't talk about making life better. We want to make life better, of course, on our customers through great product. We want to make life better on our employees through good pay and benefit and good working conditions. We want to make life better on our vendors. We want to treat our vendors well. We want to be a great partner with our vendors. We want to make life better on people around the world who we may only see one time. And I'll talk about that in a little bit when we get into our philanthropy. But when you can catch, this making life better concept has a huge impact on our company. One, because we've identified that's our why, and second, because we believe it, and we try to execute in a way that lives that out. So making life better is our why. So it really falls into three pillars, what we call people, performance, and philanthropy. So people, for our employees, we want to make sure we provide them opportunities, and this is all voluntary. We don't force anybody to do anything, but except come to work and do your job, of course. But in terms of the culture, we want to provide people opportunities spiritually, physically, financially. So, we have, we bring in speakers. I'm bringing in February 21, we're having, this guy came in, Jack Barsky. He's written a really good book called Deep Undercover, and he's an ex-KGB agent that came to the U.S., and he's going to tell his story to his employees. We bring in different speakers. We've brought in, people like Bubba Watson, the golfer, and Truett Cathy from Chick-fil-A before he passed away, and Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son. And we bring in different people. And so a couple times a year, we'll bring them in. Physical, we believe, and we share with our employees the importance of taking care of ourselves physically. We believe that, if you take care of yourselves physically, you're a better worker, you're a better, family member. you're going to live longer, you're going to feel better. And so we have a company gym on site. And we have a culture of wanting to take care of yourself physically. If you come during break time, a lot of our employees, instead of taking a break and sitting down, are actually walking around our plant because they want to take care of themselves physically. And then financially, we offer financial planning courses. A lot of employees come in and they come in with their spouses. And I've had many employees tell me these courses have changed their lives. Because, you know, a lot of relationships, you know, what often is the number one point of irritation or aggravation, right? Financial. And so, you know, we offer these employees, they come in with their spouses, and they take the course, and it really has a big impact. Highly assertive, highly cooperative. You know, we've got a culture of, we want people to speak up. You know, we want you to be highly assertive and highly cooperative at the same exact time. And you say, well, that seems a little counterintuitive. How can you be both at the same time? But that's something that we try to live out. We try to live it out through the idea of we don't want any silent liars. No silent liars. So if we're all in a meeting and I'm in the meeting as a CEO and anybody else in the company's in the meeting, if you disagree with something that you've heard in the meeting and you don't speak up, you're a silent liar. And we don't want any silent liars. And that's really hard in a lot of organizations. You got to create a culture that allows that, because, you know, most leaders really don't want people to speak up. They want people to follow what they say. But that's a path to disaster. And for a company, you know, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. No matter how smart or talented the CEO or the leader is, you know, it's just ego and pride that gets you to the point where you just want to hear yourself and people do what you want, and it's not good for the organization. So that's something that's important to us. And then the humility part, you know, as I said, you know, trying to avoid ego and pride. There's a great book by a guy named Tim Irwin called Derailed. And Tim Irwin in the book, he looks at about a dozen sort of rock star CEOs that have, you know, had a lot of success and are highly regarded, and that became derailed, and many names that you would know. And the number one thing that comes back to when somebody who's having a lot of success falls apart, the number one thing that it almost always comes back to is pride. Always comes back to pride. And they get full of themselves. They think they know it all. They don't need to listen to anybody. They're smart. They're the smartest person in the room, in their mind. And in their mind, they're the smartest person in the room in their mind. But this is, I tell you, there's a lot of evidence of this. If you're curious about that, you know, read that book, Derailed by Tim Irwin. He goes through and sort of documents that. And so we don't want that, you know. We think it's bad. You know, we love to celebrate wins and have fun and, you know, and enjoy victories, but at the same time, we don't want to become full of ourselves, because we know that's a path to destruction. So, and then focus and fun, the last part. You know, we want to be it's sort of a work hard, play hard, focus and fun. We want to accomplish a lot, but we also want to have a lot of fun, and we do have a lot of fun, I think, at our company. So that's the people part. The second is performance. Sometimes people will say, and I have this come up from time to time, people will say, we'll have to make a tough decision, and we'll have to make a decision that maybe somebody doesn't like or has a negative impact, and we'll have to let an employee go, or we'll have to cancel a distributor. And people will say, well, here you've got, you know, you want to have making life better. You say you want to make life better, but, you know, I've had spouses call me and say, you know, you say you want to make life better, but you fired my husband. You know, I've had people catch me in the airport, and a distributor, and say, you cancel our dealership, you know, how can Craft be who they say they are? But you've got to find the balance, because without performance, you can't do anything else, right? So you have to have, so I don't find anything inconsistent with being caring and wanting to make life better, but also having very high expectations related to performance. And so we do that. We're all our companies are strategic plan-driven companies. We focus on continuous improvement, you know, continuing to look to improve our company. Right and fast, we talk about anybody with enough time can be right, and anybody can be fast. But the companies that are really successful are right and fast at the same time. And so, you know, we know that to stay in business, we got to be right and fast. You know, we can't, You know, we can be right and take enough time to be right, but you know, we've got a business because everybody's done it before us. And the last thing you want to be is fast and wrong, right? And so, you know, we know that we've got to find the right balance, and we've got to be right and fast. We want to be focused on our customers and have a customer focus, but we also want to be market driving. And there's a little bit of tension between customer focus and market driving, because how many of you have read or heard of The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen? The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen, just an incredible book. And he talks about innovation. And he says there's two things that put companies out of business. And he says one is listening to their customers. He's a Harvard professor, really smart guy. I had an opportunity to spend 6 days with him at a class at Harvard and learned a lot. But he says there's two things that put people out of business. One is listening to their customers, and two is making decisions based on ROI, or return on investment. And I'm like, when I read that the first time, I'm like, we do that. We do both of those things. Now, when you dig a little deeper, you understand that he talks about the difference between sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation. So sustaining innovation is basically making your products better, and that's where you listen to your customers, and that's where you make decisions based on ROI. Disruptive innovation is being market driving. In other words, giving people something they didn't even know they wanted, right? And the best example I can give of this is the iPad or tablets. You know, 10 years ago, nobody had one. We didn't even know what a tablet or an iPad was. Now you walk down the aisle of a plane while it's in flight, and half the people on the plane have it, right? That's something that's market driving. People weren't clamoring for that, but everybody wants it. So again, it's finding all this balance, because customers, what will happen is when you listen to your customers with sustaining innovation, you'll get incrementally better. But somebody else is going to come along with disruptive innovation that's market driving and, you know, leapfrog you and put you out of business. So and there's a zillion examples of this. Probably the best, or one of the best examples is Kodak. You know, who invented the digital camera? Kodak invented the digital camera. They didn't want to do anything with it. They said, no, that's not how people are going to want to take pictures. They want to take their picture. They want to get it developed, look at their picture. So the people who invented the digital camera went bankrupt because they didn't embrace it, and others did. You know, Blockbuster Video, you know, they could have easily been the next Netflix, right? But they didn't want to do that. In fact, Blockbuster Video had an opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million at one point. And they said, that's not how people want to go in on Friday night and look at the videos. They want to pick one. They want to buy their popcorn, check out, and bring it back on Monday, right? That's what people want to do. That's not what people wanted to do. So Blockbuster Video sold in 2004 or 2006 for $6 billion, and 4 years later it was out of business. But that's that balance between, so we want to be focused on our customers, but we want to be market driving. That's a lot of what's driving watershed innovations. So the last part, and probably the part that's most unique about us, is our philanthropy. Philanthropy is very, very important to our organization. Internal support. You know, we work real hard. We have 1,400 employees across the country, work really hard to take care of our team when they need it. I say in our orientations, our employee orientations, I said, if you're here long enough, there's going to be a point where you're going to need us. And there's going to be a point where I need you. And I said, it's just a matter of time. You know, we're all going to go through challenges, and we want to be there for each other when that time comes. And the local outreach, all of our companies do local projects. I think I can tell you this is a top secret. This week, this Thursday, actually, what's today? This morning, actually. This morning, we are actually receiving an award from Habitat for Humanity, their top award for Central Florida. We've built several houses for Habitat for Humanity. We work with Giving Kids the World. We've worked with Coalition of the Homeless. You know, we do a lot of projects here in our community, and we want to continue to do that. We want to service is a big part of our organization. Probably the most unique is the global outreach. Over the last 12 years, I've taken groups of employees all over the world. I've taken employees to Cambodia, India, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, all across the Caribbean, I think every Central American country. And we go and we do projects and we serve. And we just go and we'll find, we went to India and we worked with an organization there that was fighting human trafficking, which is a huge, huge problem in India. Went to Cambodia and worked with an organization there that was trying to create jobs, for Cambodians. Ethiopia, a school there that's trying to educate school kids in a place where they don't even have electricity. So the unique part about this is we want a culture of service. So is it expensive? Yeah, that's expensive. And we charge employees $250 to do it because we want them to have some skin in the game, but we cover the rest of the expense to do that. But at a board meeting, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, one of our board members asked me, he said, how do you think, what's the cost of doing all this, and how do you think it impacts the company? And we went there and we talked through the cost, and we could spend maybe $100,000 a year or something on these trips, maybe a little more. And but I said the impact that it has on our company is many, many multiples of that, because the way that it drives our culture and the way that people know that we care. And we want people to know there's something bigger than us, right? There's something bigger than just making money and coming to work. And so we want something to, and that, not only do we get to serve, which I believe by itself is a good thing, but it also has a huge benefit to our company too, in the way that it impacts, our culture and the way that our people think. So that's our culture. It's a little bit about who we are. I can't overstate how important this is to us. And I always tell people, we stumble a lot on this. This is what we aspire to be. I wouldn't say to anybody, this is what we are. This is what we aspire to be. And I tell people, I tell our team, I say, listen, if you watch me long enough, I'm going to let you down. And so, we want to, but we do aspire to this, and this is important to us. So this is our growth strategy. We've been growing we've been growing 2 ways. Our goal was by 2020 to be $500 million in revenue. We set this goal. Am I doing all right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were trying to pull me in.
No, I was getting books so they can take notes.
All right. I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble, and Nicole starts coming up. I'm like, yeah, all you gotta do is like this, and I'll. So we want to be $500 million by 2020. Last year, the year that just ended in December, we were about 510. So we actually got that a couple of years early. So our new goal is $1 billion. We're trying to get to $1 billion in revenue. We think we're on track to do that. We've got a couple of acquisitions in the work, a lot of growth. But we do it 2 ways. One, through acquisitions. Most of the companies you see around, a few years ago, I've been at CorrectCraft 12 years ago, and 10 years ago, we were basically that one box, Nautique, in Orlando. Now we're all over the country. So, but we look for, we do acquisitions a little different than most companies. Most companies go in, if you're selling to a public company, you're selling to a PE firm. Generally, if you're selling your company, you're selling to a buyer who wants to buy it, wants to own it 3 to 6, 7 years, has got an exit strategy, and they want to sell the company. I tell the people when we go in to buy a company, we don't have an exit strategy. We're buying for long-term growth. We want to grow. We want to invest in the company. And I tell sellers that we will look after your employees, we will look after your brand, and we will look after your legacy. A lot of times when sellers sell businesses, they're persona non grata. I mean, the next day, the locks are changed. They're not welcome back. I'm telling them just the opposite. Listen, you're always welcome. Come to our Christmas parties. Come to our company picnics. Show up anytime you want. So sellers like that. Not almost, every single one of the acquisitions we've done, the sellers had somebody who would pay them more money for the acquisition. But they sold to us because of our approach, our long-term approach. So that's the acquisition side, and then of course we try to optimize. We work very hard to optimize all of our companies. There's a lot of ways that we do that, which we don't have time to get into. But so this is our growth strategy, and we're now on our way to $1 billion, and we think we can easily get that, short of some significant economic issue. We think we can easily get that by 2025, probably a few years earlier. So what did we learn from the Great Recession, right? It's a big part of why we're here. We were impacted dramatically by the Great Recession. We were building 65 boats a week in the spring of 2006, and later that year we were building 3 boats a week. Wow. Okay, so do you say there's 77,000 students here? Okay, 77,000 students. So, okay, so that would be like for Valencia, all in the same day, 70,000 students withdrawing. UCF has got 65,000 students. It'd be like 60,000 students withdrawing all in the same day, and you've got none of that revenue, but you've got all your costs. And so it was a pretty impactful, for our business. And recreational boating, right? Nobody needs a boat. The thing that drives our industry is consumer confidence. So it doesn't matter whether people have money or not, because people can have plenty of money, but if they don't feel good, they're not going to buy a boat. They can not have any money, but if they feel good, they'll go out and borrow the money and buy a boat, right? So really, that's the way it works. It's consumer confidence, right? That's what drives our business. So during end of 2008, 2009, where was consumer confidence, right? It was really, nobody knew where this was going to end. We're in the fog of war, so to speak. So boat sales just evaporated. So, but we did learn a few things. One is to always be looking forward, and this is part of maybe why I'm sort of really wired that way now. I remember sitting at my desk in September of 2006, and I think it was around the 15th or so, but around September 2006, I remember sitting at my desk and thinking, what is happening? What's going on? Reading the news, and Henry Paulson and George Bush saying, if we don't approve the $700 billion, the economy's collapsing. $700 billion that got approved in hours through Congress as a stimulus because the economy was collapsing. The country was going to collapse. And I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And so, trying to stay focused. If you look back, you guys, some of you read the book, Michael Lewis's The Big Short. There's people that saw it coming, right? People that saw it coming. And so, but I didn't see it coming. And so, I knew there's some challenges. We were having some challenges in our industry, but nothing like that. So, always trying to be, one of the lessons we learned is always try to be looking forward. And that's really what's driving what I talked about earlier, our watershed innovation, some of the things that we're doing with innovation and technology, because I believe that equally dramatic to what we went through in 9 and 10 is going to be what we're going to go through the next few years with technology. University, we talk about this at UCF. Dale Whittaker, the president of UCF, he and I have had several conversations about this. Education is going to be dramatically different, dramatically different. You're going to sit with a computer and headphones and virtual reality and artificial intelligence you'll be constantly assessing you and you'll be able to sit in your home and learn 10 times better than you can today in a classroom. And I'm not knocking classrooms today at all, but it's just because it'll be constantly assessing you and constantly assessing, what you're learning. That's going to, some people have asked, Clayton Christensen, a guy at Harvard, has said, 75, 80% of the schools in the country could go out of business. Universities in the country could go out of business because now the schools that got the great brands can leverage that, and you can take a Harvard course, for the same price as you can take a UCF course and have the Harvard degree and be getting a better education. So not because UCF gives a great education, because of the new technology. So, there's so many, the medical world's going to dramatically change, the medical world. And so, we're trying to do that for the boating industry. And I don't know what businesses you're in, but I guarantee you it's going to be a lot different. And Warren Buffett has a saying, he says, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. There's a lot of people swimming naked and the tide's going out. And, they're going to be exposed and they're going to be out of business. And so whatever your business is, it's going to change. I guarantee it's going to change. And so, you need to be prepared for that. And you can see it as one or two ways. You can see it as, oh my gosh, a lot of people don't like change, right? You can see it as, oh my gosh, what's happening? Or you can embrace it. And, that's what we're trying to do at our company. We're trying to embrace it because it doesn't matter. You can't fight it. It's like you can't fight the tide going out. You can't fight it. There's nothing you can do to fight it. So you can, you can try to hang on as long as you want, or you can embrace it. That's why on a national basis, I wish our country would, focus on the inevitable and really embrace it, because we've got the ability easily to lead in these areas. So always be looking ahead. Keep the mothership alive. That's what we tried to do at Correct Craft. You got to make really tough decisions, right? That's one of the lessons for us. You got to be willing to make really tough decisions. And if you're not willing to make really tough decisions and make them right and fast, you're not going to survive. So keeping the mothership alive. One one of the things, when I came to Correct Craft, it was, I don't have time to go into the story, but I was the 5th CEO in 5 years. And it was a mess. It was just a really big mess. And so I came on, and I had, is that for me? Yes, sir. Thank you. So I came on, and I'd laid out, a several-year plan. We ended up doing that, instead of doing it over, 10 years, we did over 10 weeks. So we had to, again, we were in just like total survival mode. So we just were making big changes really fast. So it's the old saying, no, don't waste any good crisis. So use the crisis to make a lot of changes fast. Invest while others are retreating. This is one thing that we did. And there's a balance, because you got to keep the mothership alive, right? But the balance too is everybody else is retreating. It's a great time to invest, and that's one of the things that we tried to do in our product development. And coming out of the downturn, we were way ahead of a lot of other companies because we'd invested, so we had good product and we had things to be able to offer and help catapult our company ahead coming out of the downturn, because we were willing to make some of those investments. They're tough decisions to make, though, because you don't know. Now in hindsight, you can look back and all this stuff's obvious, right? But when you're in the fog of war, you don't know how long is this going to last. Is this forever? Is it always going to be like this? Is this going to be, a few months, a few years? And then find a way to keep your best people. One of the things that, if I've had any success at all during my career, it's been because I've been surrounded by good people. And, so you want to just do whatever you can, to keep your best people during that time. So, preparing for the next recession. We just went through a recapitalization, refinance at our company, and we dealt with maybe 7 or 8 different banks throughout the process. And every one of them, the number one comment we got was, our economists are telling us there's a recession coming. What's your plan to deal with it? And I've met with an economist yesterday from Wells Fargo. He said if we make it till July without an economic downturn, it'll be the longest expansion in history. It'll be 10 years, or over 10 years, right, into this expansion. And so it'll be the longest expansion in history. And he said, while expansions don't die a natural death, there's a catalyst that causes it. But there's some things that could cause it. Trade war. It's impacting our business right now. There's some things that could cause an economic downturn, and a lot of people think that one's coming. ITR Economics is a respected economics firm that we use in our industry. And they're telling us that in late 2019, early 2020, there's a 90% probability of an economic downturn. So, what do we do? How do we prepare for that? It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, because clearly there's going to be an economic downturn at some point. It's a matter of when it's going to happen, right? So the constant tension that we have at our company is we want to play to win while things are going good, but at the same time we want to be prepared for the economic downturn. So I don't want to be the guy who invests $20 million in a new plant the month before the downturn happens, right? So how do you find that balance? And that's something we struggle with every day. So just a few thoughts. We talked about this. Many think it's coming. Obviously keep your costs variable. We try to do that as much as we possibly can, keeping costs variable, not try to get stuck into long-term costs. Have a recession plan. We have a very clear recession plan that we know what steps we would take, and we put together with our team. And I've asked all of our companies, has done this. And so, we have a plan. Now, I can tell you my experience is, it's like the old general said, it's great to have a battle plan, but it all changes when the first shot's fired, right? And so the plan may change once you get into the battle, but you're way ahead if you have a plan. At least you have some direction, directionally, you know what you want to do. Act quickly. It's, a lot of companies that really struggle or end up going out of business are because they just took their time and they don't want to act. They don't want to pull the trigger. They don't want to make the necessary changes that are happening. And then, I talked about this briefly, the challenge of do we play to win or do we prepare for the recession, and how do we balance all of that? So I'm happy. Is it okay if I take questions, Jeff?
Yes, I have a question for you.
Okay.
When you're speaking about keeping costs variable,
very specific on what that means to folks like small mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, sure. I mean, any type of, contract, any type of long-term contract, even if it's a little more expensive, view it on a shorter-term basis. Maybe instead of doing a big capital project, lease a facility that, a lease you can get out of or on a shorter-term basis. Anything you can do to create flexibility that doesn't tie you into a long-term, long-term commitment on your costs yes, sir.
Sort of related to that question, but do you have the ability to make use of contractors to be able to variabilize the labor aspect?
Yes. Well, the labor, we love our employees and we don't let anybody go, but the labor really is a variable cost because, obviously you can have staff reductions, whether it's contract or the labor. But that's tough, it pains me. It pains me to let one person go, much less, dozens. So, but yeah, I mean, different, instead of hiring on 3 people in your marketing department, maybe hire a marketing agency, might be an example, of that. So.
One of the main reasons for a retail business is serious trouble. They sign 5 to 7 year lease.
Yeah.
Especially the restaurant business. That's one of the key reasons they go out of business, rather than controlling their business model to make sure it works for a year or so. Right. It's better to pay the rent, higher rent for a year than signing a lease.
Yeah, and don't ever sign a personal guarantee. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Jeff?
Bill, I'm curious. I see the pillars of success, and it reminds me of John Wooden's pyramid of success. When you came in, you were right in a very turbulent time. I love the unifier around God and purpose. Through these acquisitions, how do you select these companies to align with that, and what's that integration like?
It's a great, really, really good question. We have found, our experience, we've made several acquisitions, that it's a lot less challenging than we thought it would be. People tend to really embrace it. And so we've had obviously we're the new owner, so, and I know people will tell you what you want to hear sometimes, but we found people genuinely have embraced it, and they've embraced the culture of service. And we have a lot of people that, I've had people many times, people say something to me along the line, we're in a factory setting. All of our businesses are factory settings. So I've had a lot of people say to me, hey, I don't necessarily buy into this, but I enjoy working in an environment where I'm not hearing the F-bomb, 20 times a day. Or, I enjoy working in a more of a family-friendly environment. Even though I may not get into this whole service thing or, the fake thing, and that's fine. That's totally fine, but a lot of times people appreciate the environment. It's amazing, people on the service side, the first service trip we did, we went to Tecate, Mexico, and we built a house for a homeless family. And we spent 3 days doing it. When I say a house, not a house like you guys live in. This was a big shed with a couple rooms in it. But the family was incredibly thankful. I mean, just tears. We're handing the keys in. Everybody's crying. But it was miserable. We slept on the desert floor. There were like 30 of us, 25 of us. We slept on the desert floor. We were over the house was built up over the city sewage pit, so we could hardly breathe the 3 days we were doing it. And it was like 110 degrees every day. So we're sweating like pigs. So at the end of it, it was a really rough 3 days. So at the end of it, though, I got all our employees together, and I said, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. We're at the airport. We're actually at San Diego airport, and we found it coming back. We found this big area we're sitting. I said, I don't want to put you in the spot, but I'd love everybody to go around. Just give me 20 seconds or 30 seconds about your experience. And most of the people said things like, best 3 days of my life. Can't wait to do it again. Because there's something that impacts you when you're able to help somebody like that. And even when, in some ways, the more challenging it is for you, the more impact it has on you. And it really, really had a big impact. And a lot of those people have been back. We've done that over and over again. So, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the manufacturing side. I know in China, they, you know, the manufacturing base, the manufacturing ecosystem they have there is phenomenal. And a lot of people think it's just cheap labor, but it isn't just cheap labor. They're truly set up to build products quickly and effectively and efficiently. And some of them are cheap, but some of them are not cheap. And a lot of really high quality products come out of there. And folks like you have stayed in the United States. And is there a comparison there? I mean, do you learn from that, or do you obviously haven't exported your manufacturing outside the U.S.
It's interesting. It's a great question. We have no plans to export outside the U.S. As I've traveled around, I've been to over 100 countries in all of our 70 that we're in. As I've traveled around, I almost always meet with government officials and I always meet with industry officials. I get asked every single country I get to, what can we do to get you to move over? And there's a tremendous amount of pressure on American CEO that travels, globally to move operations. So we see it as a really big long-term challenge. And we want to build in the U.S., no plans, under my watch, we're going to build in the U.S. But there's a tremendous amount of challenge because what happens is it's a very predictable path here. Somebody in Asia, Korea, Japan, China, they come out with a new boat and everybody laughs at it. Okay, everybody laughs at it. The quality isn't that good. It's not, who's going to buy that? And it gets discarded, in terms of a potential threat. And then over a few years, it starts getting a little better. And then next thing you know, people are looking at it. And it's like, wow. And I had one of these moments, this was years ago, back when I was still in West Palm. I think it was like 2005. And I was actually at our church. And after church, I had a Mercedes E350. And I love that car. And I had just gotten it. I'd only had it a few weeks. And a friend of mine had just gotten a Hyundai Genesis. And I didn't know what it was. And so he showed me the car. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, this is impressive. I said, what? Hyundai? I said, this can't be a Hyundai. Because Hyundai had just come out like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And they were like pieces of junk, right? And they had, at first, I'm not saying they are now at all. But and then all of a sudden over, a decade, they came, and then they pulled the, I can't remember they had a special warranty that they offered for like a couple of years. It really got, I think it was like a lifetime, 100,000 mile warranty, bumper to bumper. We cover everything. And so people started looking at it, and now Hyundai's a great competitor, a great car brand. And so that's the thing you got to watch out for. We're going to have global competition at some point. Our industry doesn't really right now. Most of our industry is U.S. We have a lot of European competition, but not from Asia, which is really the real threat. But it'll come out, people will laugh at it, and then a decade later it'll be like, they're eating our lunch. We got to do something. So, yes.
I remember back in the 60s when we were really laughing at the Honda Civic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Toyota.
Toyota is like
Datsun, right?
I just want to make a quick comment. I grew up at the Castle Methodist Church. And so I knew Walt and that whole family. And this culture that Bill is describing is the real deal. It has never changed. And it's probably 35 or 40 years that I've known about Red Rap. We miss you being in Castle, by the way. But anyway, I just want to compliment you and your culture of your company because it's the real deal. And companies that you take over want to be a part of that culture too. It's a family mindset. It's a much more long-term way to do business. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
It seems like with your Nautique brand that your price point has grown exponentially over the past 10 years. I don't have any data to back this up. It's just me living in Florida and knowing people with your brand. So my question is, how do you continue to drive that price point, and where do you think that the tipping point is for those?
Well, we haven't found the tipping point yet, but I think there is one, clearly. This is one of the challenges. This is one of the challenges with sustaining versus disruptive innovation. In a mature market, what do we learn in our economics classes? What do they teach here at Valencia, at UCF, in our economics classes? Competition, healthy, good competition does what to prices? Brings them down. That's not true. Okay, that's not true. Healthy competition in a mature market drives prices up, not down. And we're living it right now in the boating industry, because what happens is we have a mature market and people want more. So what's driving the prices up isn't because our margins are going up. You know, we wish that was the case. What drives the prices up is that people want more technology, they want more features, they want more benefits. And so we've got a very competitive segment, but the prices keep going up instead of down. And the reason is because we're all trying to outdo each other for the next big feature, but every one of those features add prices. And so as of today, people still are asking for features and they're still willing to pay the cost of it. So we're not, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, you used to be able to buy when I got there 12 years ago, you could buy a fully loaded, you know, wakeboard boat for, you know, $70,000, $80,000, and today they're north of 200. You know, but it's not because, you know, all of a sudden we're making double or triple the margin. Not at all. Our margin's about the same as where it's always been. But people want more and more in it. So that competition is actually driving prices up instead of down. But that's where you've got to be careful. Remember I was saying the difference between sustaining and disruptive innovation? That's where the disruptor comes in with a whole new way of doing it that you didn't see coming and puts all the sustainers out of business. So that's why we're trying to do both. So it's a great question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I work at a startup studio.
Is this you said a suggestion?
Yeah, I want to.
Is this a stock pick?
No.
No, okay.
I work at startup studio as a mentor and advisor.
Starter
Startup studio downtown.
Okay.
Or high-tech. So about 6 or 8 people are presenting their pitch. And we are practicing that. At that time, there were about 25 students, 15 to 17-year-old from China, attended that. They are visiting this country, learning from different countries. I was blown away. Those guys are all in the business already, 15 to 17 years. All robotics and AI. The question was, how does it work? I couldn't believe it.
Listen, our watershed innovations, we're trying to do, as I've talked about, we can't buy the parts that we need for our projects here. We have to go to Europe or Asia. It's a real challenge for the United States. There's 2 or 3 things that create a lot of concern for me related to our country. I won't go into it because I could get going for a while. That's really a big one, is we're focused on, you know, and I don't mean it's a political statement at all, but as a country, you know, we want to save the past. We want to save coals, is sort of the example, when the whole rest of the world's moving on to solar and fusion, and, you know, it's like, what?
Fight the last battle.
Yeah, it's like, you know, we've got to focus on, you know, the future and the right things, and I'm concerned that, and this, you look back all through history, you know, from the Assyrians, the Persians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, I mean, it's all the same story. You get a certain point of success, and then you focus more on trying to maintain it and save it than you do look into the future, where all these startups got nothing to lose, right? You're in Central Asia, one of the stand countries, or, you know, in Africa, some really cool stuff happening in Africa right now, and, you know, there's things, you got nothing to lose, so you're invested in artificial intelligence and nanotechnology and these things, and that's the future, and I'm hoping that we'll eventually be focused on the future too. All right, thank you, I really appreciate your time.